Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Taya, and we're going to do a little podcast on Kesley Brasil from Let's Sprout. We're going to talk about her work as an activist, her history as an activist, and how she really got started into environmental and social justice activism.
So my name is Matt. Just to give you guys a little bit more background information about Let's Sprout, the organization that Kelsey started. It started in Halifax 5 years ago, and they've really focused on community outreach. So specifically working with young people in the Halifax area, getting them just to realize a little bit more of their own agency and how their voices really do matter when it comes to environmental issues, but honestly, all social issues is what they like to focus on. They just like to give young people a voice because they've just don't usually get a platform to express their thoughts and feelings about many things. And that's what Let's Sprout has been working on for the last 5 years, giving these young people a platform to express themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so, just to kind of dive right into the whole topic of Let's Sprout, the way that Let's Sprout has helped me learn about activism and kind of how to do it, how to get into it, how to make sure it's meaningful and sustainable is through their community outreach programs that Kelsey mentioned. She also mentioned the importance of having a passion, being passionate about what you're advocating for, because if you don't have passion behind it, then how can it really give you that sense of I accomplished something? How can you really do something for it without having at least something driving you to get it done?
Yeah, she mentioned too, like in the pod when our interview with her, that the importance of not just being a martyr for a cause for the sake of being a martyr for a cause. Like, choose something that you're actually passionate about before you dive right in. You should never feel like you're supposed to do something. You should really, well, at least like the beliefs of Let's Sprout and what they like to base themselves off of. You should focus on what you want to fix and
Mm-hmm.
move from there instead of doing what you think is expected of you, which I thought was kind of a cool little thing that they like to focus on.
Yeah, it really helped me kind of understand the whole point of activism. So, um, an example that you had also mentioned, um, or Matthew had also mentioned during our interview that Kelsey had agreed with was, as you had just said, like make sure that you choose something that you are passionate about. Don't just choose something that, you know, I'm not going to focus on food instability, like you said in the interview, if that's not something that's an issue in my community. Just because I think that, food insecurity is an issue in the world, okay, but can I really do something about that in my community? Is that going to be a sustainable and meaningful topic to advocate for where I am? So, kind of basing your activism on the community and what you can actually get done and what is sustainable, meaningful, and passionate within like what's really possible. What can you get done and get the most done of
And I
it?
think that ties really well into another point that Kelsey brought up was the importance of having meaningful partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
So not just doing something on social media for the sake of showing that you're doing it on social media. Like when you make these connections with other activists or other groups who are also interested in supporting your cause, you should really be focusing on bringing everybody up. Like I know there's an expression, a rising tide raises all ships, and I think that really applies well to activism, especially this kind of activism where it's so orientated and driven. You can't be promoting yourself like your work is no more important than someone else's work. Might not seem like it to you, but every little thing that gets done really can make a big difference in these communities. And that's something that Let's Bros really likes to focus on.
Exactly. And something else that was mentioned during the interview was so we kind of noticed that Let's Sprout really they undersell all of the amazing work that they do. Um, and that can actually be beneficial because if you're posting on social media all of these small little things that you're doing, it kind of starts to take away from the bigger impact. So, kind of being mindful of what you're posting on social media, what you're putting out there. Do you really want to overwhelm people and kind of desensitize them to what you're doing? Or do you want what you're posting to actually have an impact, to be meaningful instead of just another thing that people scroll past? And I think that's a really big or important part in activism in today's society, is making sure that you're being mindful of how are we going to make sure that our message is being seen, our message is being heard, and it's not just something that you're going to scroll past
Yeah,
on.
not letting your message get lost in the noise of it
Exactly.
all.
Yeah. So I think it was almost beneficial, the point that that was made in the interview by, I mean, when we had the conversation about it being undersold, their work. I think it was almost helpful to the cause for like Let's Sprouts campaigns, is when they did post something, the algorithm put it out there. Do you know what I mean? Like, once it wasn't just something you saw all the time. When you saw the name Let's Sprout, you're like, oh, what are they posting? Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna go check that out. I don't see them all the time. So I thought that was really, really cool.
And I know, Taya, you have a quote from Kelsey that you wanted to share, something that you really took away from from the interview with her that you thought the class should also hear.
Yes, yes, I do. I'm just going to screen share the quote, actually. Just one moment. No?
Mm-mm. Do you want to just maybe give us a summary of what she's talking about?
For sure, yeah. So basically, what she's talking about is the importance of. One moment. There we go. Okay, so basically, what she's talking about is the importance of making sure that, again, what we kind of talked about just a few minutes ago, passion projects, making sure that what you're focusing on is really important to you. So she said something along the lines of, I'm actually going to read from our transcript just to really give a good look at what she said. So she said, um, youth sometimes felt that they not necessarily had the spaces to design or create the action that they wanted. So they kind of want to talk through it, like, how would you do it? What do you want to do? What can I do? And then another example was, maybe my grandmother's in a senior's home. How do I support her? What does that look like? So Let's Sprout actually partnered with Rising Youth, which is an organization that supplies micro grants to youth. It's a really cool organization, and so they partnered with them. And basically, a little quote from Kelsey is, they said, hey, if we get a group of youth together virtually and help them through the grant process, can they have like, would they allow them to host these spaces through and be funded to do that and provide youth that kind of that space? So they partnered with them, and then they kind of mapped out and helped youth create those passion projects that were important to them and important to what they really want to do.
Which is
So
really what Let's Sprout, the whole organization bases themselves off of. They want to really empower people who, or young people especially, who don't really have that in their day-to-day life, kind of give them an outlet to show that it's important that they get the chance to do that as well.
exactly, yeah. And I thought that was really inspiring, and it helped me kind of put into perspective that, growing up, I can only imagine how my work as, or I mean, my future as an environmental activist based on this class. What if I had had that opportunity to work with an organization like Let's Sprout at the age of, I think she said they were between like 9 and 14
Mhm.
ish. Imagine if you had had that opportunity to start your work as an activist then, even if there was just something small, like thinking of what you want to do in the future.
Well,
Like,
it's like a 10-year head start for some of these kids, right? 9 years old versus first year university, right? Like such a big difference, and they get the opportunity to be introduced to a lot of these things that they just don't teach us in school, in public school.
exactly, yeah. Like, you kind of, it teaches them so many good tools to go on to further help society. And I think that it's just amazing the kind of work that they do. Um, Another little example of like a passion project that one of the youth wanted to do in the group was, they wanted to host like a little like, for people where English wasn't their first language, that they wanted to communicate with local businesses. They found ways to help them do that, to offer like assistance in learning English. Or there was another student that Kelsey said they wanted to bring in iPads to seniors homes and teach the seniors how to use them so that they connect with people, with family, especially during COVID. I just think overall, it showing them that they can advocate for the things that they care about and for the people even that they care about at such a young age. I can just imagine what kind of impact that'll have on, say, when they're our age, even when they're in their 20s, whether they go to university or not. What's that going to look like, and how much more are they going to get done?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They do some awesome work there. And another thing that I wanted to mention too, we actually got a chance to talk to Kelsey about the social development goals, and I thought it was really cool because if you go all the way back to our first practicing activism project that we did at the start of the semester, we did the SDG workshop with Steve Lee. And Kelsey actually worked with Steve Lee like as her first job right out of university. So I'm gonna try to play the clip here. And
For
let's see
sure.
what Kelsey has to say about that.
Mm-hmm. And that was it was nice to see that come full circle. I think you had mentioned that during the interview. It was nice to kind of see all of that come together and be like, wow, what we're learning is really meaning something.
Just puts a little bit of perspective to the stuff that we've learned in class. It's not really just a theory. She really talked about how they apply the social development goals as just a basis of their business model, but she'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
So actually with my work in Ontario with the it's called the 3% Project with Steve Lee, it was all very linked to the SDGs. And so I think that's when I learned about like how to relate your work to them, because like before it was just kind of this like overall concept that I knew existed. And so I think the way that it's played out in my work, to speak to it very like literally, is that sometimes like when you need funding, you need to relate it to the SDGs. Like it's about like bringing it back to the global perspective and bringing it back to the goals that we're working towards as a country. So I think honestly that's how it's related to my work, is that I often have to think about it in a funding perspective, like how does our work progress these goals.
So yeah, very cool to see something that we learned in class being actually used and applied in someone's job, and it's making a difference in those jobs. And she even talked about how she takes those SDGs and builds a lot of the programming for Let's Sprout off of those SDGs. Like less so with funding than it's a big organization that she was working from before, but it really goes to show how they're applicable to any situation. If you try hard enough, you can use them.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really inspiring, and it kind of showed like these foundations, they're not just foundations that you look at once and you never, really hear about again. They're actually useful in real life scenarios, and in terms of like that kind of helped me build my capacity as, I would say more so an aspiring activist, just because we're all really at the beginning of our journey I find in this course, is realizing, okay, like these foundations that we're learning about, they can actually help us. And especially when it comes to things like funding, that can help us like further down the road. Yeah, I thought that was a really, really good point.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, if there's so much more that we could talk about with this organization and the good work that they do, but I really feel like these are the standout points, at least that I got from our conversation with Kelsey. So hopefully we were able to inform you guys a little bit more about what they do. And
Yeah, no. If you're looking for any kind of more information, I would definitely recommend checking out Let's Sprout Instagram, their Twitter. They have most forms of social media. They actually also have TikTok, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I hope that everyone learned a little bit more about Let's Sprout and all of the amazing work that they do.